Since I'm not going to be able to cover Justice League or Sony Animation's The Star this weekend, since I will be away from my hometown, I'm going to be going to Equestria LA in Anaheim. So if you're going to be there, come see me, because I'll be around with Saber Spark and AC Race Best and Jax Blade and a bunch of other people. So videos on Justice League and The Star will be out next week, along with Coco coming out next week as well. And there's also the Hey Arnold movie. There's a lot of stuff at the end of November. But for this video, I wanted to talk about something that I think a lot of people will be interested in finding out. Because one question that I'm asked quite a lot is, what is the worst animated movie I've ever seen? So I decided to make a list of the 10 worst animated films I have ever seen, whether it's in a theater or just like at home or watching with friends. Just the absolute worst I've seen. I'm not going to have these in any particular order. These are just 10 very bad movies. The first on my list is the Emoji Movie, which of course I did a video on earlier this year, and out of all of the films on this one's probably the best one, and that's saying something because the other ones are really bad if I say this one is the best one on the list. The Emoji Movie is definitely a bad film, but I think I hate more what it represents, in that Sony Animation is trying to do this trend rather than going with something more creative like Gendy's Popeye project or the Medusa project that Lauren Faust was working on. So yeah, the Emoji Movie, I just hate what it represents. Next on my list is a very popular bad movie, and that's Food Fight. The origin behind this film is just really fascinating, and the fact that it cost like $60 million to produce, and then it took forever to come out. It's just, the story behind it is more fascinating than the movie itself. It looks very ugly. It's like has this weird sheen on everything, and the animation is just very janky. However, I would recommend watching it with friends just to riff on, because it's just such a terrible, fascinatingly bad movie. Next on my list is Strange Magic, which I saw in theaters, and I wish I didn't, because it is ugly as sin. This was based on a story created by George Lucas, of all people, and the whole film is basically a jukebox musical, and done very terribly. This one is probably animated a lot better than the other ones on this list, but it is very ugly, the characters are very unlikable, and it is just awful with the music. Next on the list is a film probably a lot of you don't know about. It's called Ribbit. It's about this frog in this rainforest, and he's like out of place, and he falls in love with a squirrel named Sandy, you know, like from SpongeBob, I guess. And they kind of make the squirrel hot, or they make it like seem like she's hot or whatever. It's very strange. And it stars Sean Astin, of all people. This one's actually a Malaysian film, and there's going to be a few others on here that are foreign films, but the animation on some of these foreign films are very bad. That's not to say that, like, foreign countries can't do animation, because there's a ton that can do really good animation. Japan does good animation, France does good animation, so yeah, there's just some countries that haven't gotten there yet. Alright, for the halfway mark we have Norm of the North, which is absolutely terrible. It's probably the worst animated movie I've ever seen in theaters. I was completely surprised that this actually made it to theaters with how awful it is. The animation is very janky, the story is all over the place, and it stars Rob Schneider. Just watch my review of this movie and you'll understand why it's so bad. I also have reviews of Strange Magic and the Emoji Movie, and also another movie coming up in this list. Now, this next movie was on the top of my list of the worst movies I've ever seen for a very long time, until I get to another one that's later in this list. But this one is Kiara the Brave. It is so weirdly bad. Since the movie is called Kiara the Brave, you would figure it rips off Brave, but it's actually ripping off like a ton of other different Disney properties, like Hercules, Pirates of the Caribbean, and they even rip off some other like music from other properties like Star Wars, and I thought I heard like something from Mario RPG in it. It's very weird. The movie is actually from India, where it was called Super K, and there's a theme song at the end of the movie where they say Super K, but it sounds like they're saying super gay. Next is another movie that I've done a review of, that is Romeo and Juliet Sealed with a Kiss. This was made by one person, but they didn't refine it that much. A lot of the time, the animation doesn't look that bad, it's frame by frame, but then there are points where it goes into this weird puppet tool animation. And the backgrounds in general just look awful in this movie. It's the worst adaptation of Romeo and Juliet I've ever seen. Now, these next three movies, and probably some of the movies that were earlier in this list, are what people like to call mockbusters. Movies with the intention of ripping off or capitalizing on the popularity of another franchise. Which is why the movie Kiara the Brave was named Kiara the Brave rather than Super K. And oh man, mockbusters, or knockbusters as some would call it because they're like knockoffs, they are really bad. One of them that I watched with friends was called What's Up? And it came out in 2009, ripping off the movie Up from Pixar. And I don't think I have to tell you which is the better of the two. I barely remember anything about this movie. I just know it was terrible, and there was a scientist, and they were going around the world in a hot air balloon. I think my brain just pushed out any memory of it. It's really terrible. Then there was something that appeared on Netflix one day that me, Saberspark, Hirasashi, and a bunch of other people, we watched it. It was called Leo the Lion, which is sort of ripping off The Lion King. There's actually shots where it kind of looks like Be Prepared with this elephant villain, and we had to take a break from this movie because we were like 20 minutes in, and he was like, oh, how much is there left? And we're only 20 minutes in! So, yeah, it's that kind of terrible. It's about a lion who is like a vegetarian. It's really dumb, and very awful. Now for the last movie I want to mention, Cargo. This is still very fresh in my mind because I watched it at the last convention I was at. Saberspark was given this movie at the convention, so we decided to try watching it. Of course, this is trying to rip off Cars, but it's really bad. And you know how I mentioned Up earlier? The voice of Carl from Up is in this movie. Ed Asner is in Cargo, of all things, and he sings. I think I should have known it would be unbearably bad because when I looked at the back of it, it said it was made by Asylum. For those of you who don't know, Asylum is sort of infamous for their mockbusters. And for Cargo, I do not recommend, like, even trying to riff on this movie because it's very hard to sit through. It's that bad. So those are 10 of the worst animated movies I have ever seen. I didn't go too in-depth in any of them because I'm just making this quick video before I have to leave for the convention. But I want to ask you, what are the worst animated movies you have ever seen? Tell me down in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, by now we're getting a bit used to winter. We're like soldiers in the middle of a campaign, growing hardened to discomfort and better